Right, how are you doing, everybody? Welcome to Russell Heritage Golf. Today we're talking about, I would say, one move that will completely change not only how your golf swing looks, but also how it feels. Rotation is 100% something that we spend a large proportion of the time talking about on the channel. The main reason why is that when people come to visit for lessons, online lessons, even though they're watching some of the content, they're still not quite exaggerating the necessary move enough. Now, basically, when we go into posture to address the golf ball, we will swing back and, okay, there's always going to be some golfers that struggle with staying in posture in the backswing, which means that you'll be prone to kind of, should we say, kind of coming up a little bit. This can be because of a couple of reasons. It can be because of you're caught in between what type of backswing you're trying to do, whether you're trying to stay centered or whether you're trying to load in towards that trail side, and you end up kind of non-committing to either. You've got to think about more pressure and activation as well. So certain groups of muscles in the top of the hip area and being much more aware of pressure in towards the ground will help you stay much more in posture. Aside from that, the transition is the hardest thing I think that most amateur golfers tend to get wrong, because you know, what we're talking about is this sort of, whether you want to class it as drifting, which means that we're kind of, if we're in posture, we swing back in posture and then we turn more horizontally. Whether you want to class it as an early hip extension, whatever it is, it's kind of the common thing that we tend to see that most amateur golfers tend to get wrong. If you can get into the habit of swinging up and keeping yourself much more, should we say, downward facing and rotating much more in posture, what will happen is that it will completely change how you hit the golf ball. So essentially, what we're doing consciously or subconsciously is that we have to do things to be able to hit the golf ball straight, like get the club on plane, get the club face under control, and obviously return the club face square upon the point of impact. But to be able to increase that probability of consistency, obviously what we don't want is too much manipulation going on at the point of impact, meaning that if you get a little bit kind of stuck, you can kind of use your hands and it'll probably bail you out a percentage of the time. But let's suggest that it's only bailing you out 40% of the time. I kind of get, not concerned, but I kind of think that even if you hit a lot of shots, because it's quite vulnerable, I'm not sure the probability will ever increase. And what we know from professional golfers, good level amateur golfers, low handicap golfers, mid handicap golfers, is that it's not the definitive change between all of those is not actually that short game led. It's much more about consistency basically across board, but also consistency with iron play and approach play coming in towards the greens. And I think the reason for that is because generally, obviously, pros and better amateur golfers tend to move better, therefore operating more stability, therefore getting more consistency coming in towards impact. So what you need to do, and my suggestion for you, is to 100% spend time doing these sort of exercises at home as well. But if you kind of place your hand across the lower part of your stomach and then swing up towards the top just using your trail hand, then what you want to do is you want to make sure that you feel like the glove on the back of my lead hand in the early part of the golf swing is pointing much more down towards my lead ankle. And then what this does is this will give you a sense of, for most amateur golfers, coming over the top. So when I meet most people that come for lessons and I go, okay, can you do this sort of exercise for me? They'll recognise that it's the correct thing to do because of the information on the channel, but they still can't get out of the head that they're over the top. And that's the thing. That's where this is what we're going to be talking about this week on the channel, is that you want to do things like we said earlier, find plane and club path, but you don't necessarily want to be doing that hands and arms. You want to be doing that body and then using your hands and arms to help you find plane. So 100% try and do it that way round. So don't kind of stand there and, you know, pull your arms down and then roll in towards impact. You want to try and move your body correctly and then use your hands and arms to be able to help you find that hitting area and get consistency at impacts. Because if you can start to move in posture in your rotation, it doesn't mean that you don't have anything to do with your hands and arms, but it means that you have considerably less than what you would do previously. So again, we've been talking about it. We've been talking about it quite a lot recently in terms of some of the feelings in this early transition. But 100% a worthwhile exercise is to really kind of swing up towards the top, and then in that first move, just feel as though like your chest and lower part of the stomach and belt buckles moving much more down towards that lead ankle, and try and get into the habit of leaving your arms up in the top of the backswing, and then just moving the lower body first. That way, when you go back to swinging a golf club, you'll start to feel that sort of separation, which is the lower body rotating first, leaving the arms up in the air. This will give you that sort of sense that your arm's getting much closer towards your chest, and then from there you still be able to find plane. It's often hard to change what you're doing, and therefore when I again tend to meet people for lessons and stuff, I tend to offer them the suggestion that rather than necessarily changing what it is that you're currently doing, you could keep that and tweak it, but why don't you learn a different type of shot? So tend to get them experimenting with the idea of, okay, if you were going to hit a fade, what would you do? And then we would talk about the relationship of the club head and the path and the release pattern, and then we would talk about the orientation of the body to be able to do that would have to operate this way rather than up. And then we also talk about the idea of trying to hit it lower. So how would you hit a low fade? And then all of a sudden, what you tend to see with people that then try and hit the low fade is that actually you end up producing some pretty straight shots. And it's a different part of that sort of motor imagery that we've been talking about recently, that if you kind of go down the range, if you get the opportunity to, and get yourself parallel aligned, but still try and feel this sort of fade shot, then it's going to be a much better feeling for hitting the golf ball as opposed to going this way and two hands and arms. So if you've got the opportunity, I would try and spend some time at home working on keeping your body much more downward facing, but what you're trying to train is that your arms should stay up in the air as you're doing this, and you should do it to the degree in which you can. That's the important thing. We want to do this to some degree. If that means that you can create a huge range of motion in terms of these two, then fine. If that means that you can only create a smaller amount, then that's up to you as well. Each to their own. So try and, as a bit of advice, is that try and change what it is that you're doing. So maybe think more about this sort of low fade shot, and then what that'll do is that will help you get this feeling of staying much more over the ball and the release pattern working much more this way. Catch up with you soon.